MACD histogram inflections. So let's get back to the slide where we explain histogram. Remember, histogram is the difference between the MACD line and the signal line. As those two diverge, histogram bars rise. As those two lines start converging, indicating loss of momentum or diminishing momentum in price advances, then the histogram shrink. Histogram bars get smaller, they shrink, even dip below the zero line, so dip into negative. All right, and so how can we use that to our advantage? Well, let's look at the basically here we have the Ethereum price chart, just like we did in the beginning, but here we'll look at some interesting additional color. Let's first zoom in, because this is small. Okay, so what we have here is, again, we have your buy and sell and buy signals. That's the basic signal line crossovers that we've discussed, that we are going to trade. But notice that the histogram bars highlighted in green oftentimes can give you an early signal that the momentum is inflecting and changing, because when you have bought it here, right, and you notice that the histogram bars are rising nicely as the price is going up, the MACD line is rising, the signal line is rising but slower, and those two are diverging. And as they diverge, indicating increasing and steady momentum in price advances, the histogram bars are rising clearly, nicely rising, until we get to a point where the price, as indicated in this section here, or particularly this section, starts flattening out, going sideways. The momentum is stalling, it's diminishing, and that's reflected in the declining MACD histogram bars, right? And so that's an early signal that there might be a change and an inflection in the momentum. And that's a canary in the coal mine, as they say. And after two bars or two histogram bars declines, I would say that may be a signal to get out, or at least trim the position. Now, the positive is that there is the histogram bars can give you some early indications of inflection in momentum up or down. And if you did that, right, if we did that, if we sold at this point, which is highlighted by the red line, we would have sold about right here. Whereas if we waited until the actual signal line crossover, right, then which is the gray bar or the gray line, we would have sold lower right here. So our exit would have been better. We would have had a more profitable trade if we had looked or used the MACD histogram. Now let's continue with buy it here again and again. Your exit here with the sell. Well, we could just wait for the sell signal, that's fine. Or we could look at the histogram bars and say, hey, wait a minute. The histogram bars have declined now for a couple of days. That could indicate an inflection in the momentum. And indeed, the price has gone flat. And so then again, if we had sold it here, or at least trimmed the position when the MACD histogram bars begin to decline, then we would have had a better exit point than if we had waited until the sell signal. And that also works with buys. It could get you into the trade a little sooner with a little more upside if you take a look at the histogram bar changes and inflection points. So here, right here, the price was declining or flatlining, and so the histogram bars were in the negative here, right? Now, they were really ugly right here, but after that, they started improving. The bars were basically rising again, still in a negative, but basically improving from the low here, indicating potential, positive or bullish inflection in the momentum of the price. So if we listened and looked at the histogram inflection, which is indicated by the red line here, we would have gotten into the trade sooner than if we had waited for the actual signal, the crossover signal. Let's zoom out to make that more clear. So again, if we had used the histogram bar inflection point here, we would have bought the Ethereum about right here around 3,000, whereas if we waited for the buy signal, actually, we would have bought it about here, which is about 3,300 or so. So a bit later and a bit worse entry point than the histogram. Now, of course, the downside of using the histogram, because it's so early, is that it can also give you a lot of false warnings. Or getting back to this slide here, right? MACD histogram inflections occur even before the signal line crossover. So it can give you an early entry or an earlier exit. So that's the positive. It is an early indicator of momentum inflection. But the negative is that it can give you lots of false signals and can lead to some whipsawing or maybe exiting the trade too early, entering the trade too early. So really, I use it as a warning that I need to pay attention, maybe trim my position if I'm involved, if I bought the coin and it's gone up and I see that the MACD histogram bars have declined for a couple of days, maybe I'll take some profits off the table, trim half the position or so. So it gives you a warning, or if the price has been declining and it starts flattening out and the histogram bars are starting to improve for a couple of days in a row, then that may be an opportunity potentially to get involved. And again, a warning.